With 13 Metra lines stretching across hundreds of miles, this Chicago commuter rail system should be a model of efficiency. Instead, it leaves riders frustrated. The problem isn't speed or reliability, it's the lack of cohesion. Routes don't connect seamlessly, transfers feel clumsy, and the system seems designed to keep neighborhoods apart rather than bring them together. This fractured design is no accident. It reflects choices made decades ago that still shape travel today. In this week's Great Trainspeed Wednesday series, we examine why Chicago's rail feels broken and how its own structure undermines its potential. At the heart of Chicago's rail problem is something deceptively simple. Metra doesn't have one downtown hub. It has three: Union Station, Ogilvy Transportation Center, and Millennium Station. Each terminal serves a different group of lines, and each one is strong in its own direction. The problem is that they don't connect like parts of one machine. They function like three separate machines placed side by side. Millennium Station is tied closely to the Metra electric district. This line family behaves differently from most commuter rail in the U.S. It has dense stations, electric multiple-unit operations historically, and a corridor that's unusually rapid transit-like in its urban segments. Union Station is the anchor for heavyweight routes like the BNSF line, running west toward Aurora, and the Heritage Corridor down toward Joliet. It also handles services like the North Central Service and the Southwest Service, each built for long-distance peak commuting. Ogilvy Station, meanwhile, is its own universe, the Union Pacific North, Northwest, and West lines. These are high-volume commuter arteries with reliable ridership patterns, but they are geographically stuck to that terminal. Here's the part that creates the daily friction. None of these terminals are directly connected by rail. If your trip starts on one Metra line and ends on another, you're usually forced into a sequence that feels strangely manual for a city of Chicago's scale. You exit one station, you walk through the loop, often across several blocks, or you drop into CTA, ride a couple of stops, and pop back up. Then you re-enter a different terminal and start over. That might sound minor, until you compare it to how regional rail works elsewhere. In cities where commuter rail is treated as a network, the expectation is simple. Trains go through the center, not into it, and dead end there. Passengers aren't asked to stitch the system together on foot or via a separate metro transfer. The network does that work for them. Chicago, by contrast, does not operate as one network. It operates as three parallel systems that stop just short of touching. That choice affects everything: how service is planned, how riders think about trips, where development happens, and what politicians prioritize. When your system ends downtown at three different terminals, you're building in transfers as a permanent part of the network. This situation can't last forever, especially with so many passengers pushing back. So what's the plan to improve, and what could change next? Let's dive into that in the next part. And if you're into topics like this, hit subscribe so you don't miss our weekly updates every Wednesday. This is where the idea of a Metra connector comes in. Despite the name, it's not just about convenience. A connector means some form of link that allows trains to run through downtown instead of terminating. That could be a tunnel. It could be a new surface alignment with grade separations. It could be staged in phases. But the operational effect is the same. Downtown stops being the end of the line and becomes the middle of the line. That single change unlocks several practical improvements that sound simple but feel transformative in real life. First, a connector allows one-seat rides across the region. Metra lines now run like spokes into downtown and stop. With a connector, some trains could keep going, from the west suburbs to the north side or another corridor, based on capacity and schedules. Second, it takes pressure off the CTA. CTA already handles huge loads, especially through the loop and on the red and blue lines. Forcing Metra riders onto CTA just to switch terminals adds extra strain to a system built mainly for city trips. Third, it can improve reliability during disruptions. Stub-end terminals are fragile. One platform backup, switch failure, or peak hour delay can cascade fast. Through running gives dispatchers more options to reroute or reorder trains, reducing those everything breaks at once moments. Fourth, and most importantly, it changes how people perceive Metra. Right now, Metra is often framed as suburban-only, peak-hour-only service. But that perception isn't just cultural. When the system forces downtown as the endpoint, it tells riders that their trip should be to the loop and back. Everything else becomes a special case. A connector doesn't have to make the trains faster to make the region feel smaller. The connector is about eliminating forced transfers that make rail feel cumbersome compared to driving. When the system is disconnected, it doesn't just waste time, it wears people out. A trip with 2 transfers and a long indoor walk doesn't just take longer, it feels like a hassle waiting to happen. And that's how you lose riders quietly. Ever been stuck in a situation like this? Drop 1 if yes, or 0 if not. And share what happened to you in the comments. We'd love to hear your experience. So if the benefits are so obvious, why has a Metra connector never been built? The short answer is governance and politics. The longer answer is that Chicago's transit ecosystem is fragmented in a way that makes obvious projects surprisingly hard. Metra runs commuter rail. CTA runs rapid transit and buses. PACE runs a suburban bus service. The Regional Transportation Authority oversees funding and coordination. Then you add the City of Chicago, the State of Illinois, federal agencies, and often freight railroads, who own or control key rights-of-way. That means there is no single institution that can push a connector forward alone. In practice, a Metra connector is a project that demands shared ownership. A connector requires coordination of operating plans, track access, signaling, downtown construction staging, station impacts, and long-term funding for both capital and operations. It also forces hard decisions about who benefits first. And here's the political irony. Disconnection doesn't generate headlines. It doesn't look like a crisis in a single day. There's no dramatic collapse, no viral video, no obvious emergency to force action. Instead, the cost of disconnection shows up as thousands of tiny penalties, spread across millions of trips. Extra minutes, awkward transfers, missed connections, and suppressed trip demand that never becomes visible because people simply don't attempt the trip in the first place. In Chicago, the hardest projects aren't necessarily the most expensive ones. They're the ones that require multiple agencies to share credit and share blame. A connector is exactly that kind of project. It's big enough to be disruptive and political, but subtle enough in its benefits that it can be postponed again and again without triggering a public revolt. Chicago's situation isn't unique. Many cities inherited terminal-based commuter rail. What's unique is how long Chicago has lived with the terminal layout without building the missing link. Philadelphia is one of the clearest comparisons. For decades, its commuter rail lines terminated on different sides of downtown. Then the region built the Center City Commuter Tunnel in the 1980s. That single project did something powerful. It made separate lines behave like one system. Riders didn't need to cross downtown as a separate trip. Trains did it for them. New York is not a perfect model. Penn Station has severe capacity and operational constraints, but it illustrates a crucial advantage. The possibility of through-running and interlining is real in a way Chicago largely cannot match. Even when the experience is imperfect, the underlying concept is present. Regional rail lines can be stitched together through the core. Paris takes it even further. The RER system treats commuter rail like rapid transit. The result is that suburban lines don't just feed the center, they connect suburbs to suburbs through central corridors with high frequency and a network mindset. The system's complexity is real, but so is its capability. That's why Chicago is such a rare case globally. It's a major city where regional rail still ends at the edge of downtown instead of running through it. This isn't about copying Paris or turning Chicago into Europe overnight. It's a simple idea. If downtown is a dead end, the system stays limited. If downtown is a connector, the whole network becomes more useful. The irony is that Chicago doesn't lack infrastructure. It already has the tracks. It already has a deep ridership base. It already has density and travel demand that many cities would envy. What it lacks is the political will to connect what already exists. A Metra connector doesn't have to happen all at once. It doesn't even have to start with a tunnel. Does Chicago want a collection of rail lines or a regional rail system? And that's the end of today's ride. Hope you enjoy IIT, and I'll see you on the next one. Until then, stay safe. Peace. After our last video about CTA and Metra, a lot of you, especially Chicagoans, said the same thing. This is good news, but it's not the whole story. Now, we're not here to downplay the significance of the recent budget boosts for the CTA and Metra, but we must ask, what's missing? These investments are a step forward, but they don't address the full range of challenges facing Chicago's transit system. Today, we're diving deeper into what's really needed to improve the CTA and Metra for the long term. Let's explore why, despite the funding, there are still critical areas that need fixing before we can truly call these systems revived. In today's episodes of Great Trainspeed. First, let's appreciate the positive steps that have been taken. Chicago's transit network is getting a much-needed investment. With the approval of the 2026 budgets, both CTA and Metra are set to receive historic levels of funding. Metra's $515.3 million capital plan includes crucial fleet modernization, with $490.9 million earmarked for new multi-level rail cars and $183.5 million for environmentally friendly, zero-emission battery-powered trains. Additionally, Metra will invest in upgrading its existing fleet, enhancing safety, and improving track infrastructure. CTA likewise has ambitious plans with the budget increases, aimed at improving the efficiency and capacity of the bus and train network across Chicago. But while these investments are critical to the system's survival and growth, we must recognize that these funds alone won't solve all the systemic issues plaguing the CTA and Metra. Funding is necessary, but it's not enough. Without addressing the underlying structural challenges, Chicago's public transportation system will continue to fall short. Today, we're diving into those gaps and examining what really needs to change to make CTA and Metra work for everyone. So, what's it all about? Let's dive into the next part of the video. And if you're finding this interesting, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and stay tuned. Let's kick things off with a major issue: station planning. The recent closure of the State and Lake Station, an essential station on the CTA Red Line, has sparked concern across the city. The station, which will be closed for 3 years for repairs, is one of the oldest on the line, but its closure highlights a much bigger issue. Why has it taken this long to address? Why was it allowed to reach such a state of disrepair before action was taken? For years, State and Lake has been in desperate need of repairs, but Chicago's transit planning failed to anticipate this and plan for these inevitable closures. The issue isn't just about repairing one station, It's about the lack of a coherent, long-term strategy for station renovations across the system. The question becomes, why wasn't this station shut down for repairs earlier, perhaps after demolishing the Randolph and Wabash stations and creating the Madison and Wabash station as a replacement? Why not plan for these major renovations proactively? Moreover, Wabash Station, another key station, is also aging and deteriorating. But with State and Lake closing for repairs, will Wabash's problems be addressed in time? The concern here is that Wabash will likely remain open until 2032, long after the deterioration becomes impossible to ignore. We're not just talking about a failure to address one station. We're talking about a fundamental failure in planning for station life cycles across the entire system. This isn't a problem unique to CTA. It's a systemic issue that affects both CTA and Metra and needs to be addressed at the planning level. Now let's turn our attention to Metra. Metra operates 11 commuter rail lines, but they are far from well connected. The three major Metra terminals, Union Station, Ogilvie Station, and LaSalle Street Station, are spread across the city, and they're not exactly close to one another. To make matters worse, there is little to no connection between the Metra lines, creating major inefficiencies for commuters. For example, let's say you live on the south side and need to catch a train heading north or northwest. Right now, you'll need to take a bus, switch trains, or wait at multiple stations just to get from one Metra line to another. This is not how an efficient transportation network should work. Metra essentially operates like three separate railroads. Each line functions independently, making the entire system harder to navigate and much less effective for riders who rely on the network for their daily commute. This kind of disconnected service is not only frustrating for riders, but it's also an issue that significantly limits the utility of the system as a whole. This is where the concept of a Metra connector comes in. A rail connector, or even a people mover system between Metra's terminals, would radically improve the system's accessibility. Imagine being able to seamlessly transfer from one Metra line to another without needing to leave the station. This kind of integration would dramatically improve commuter experience, increase ridership, and make the system much more efficient. Unfortunately, for now, the lack of connectivity is holding back Metra from being as effective as it could be. It's time for Metra to stop operating as isolated lines and start functioning as one cohesive network that serves the region efficiently. Before we move to the next part, we're turning your comments into a Chicago Rail series. Based on your feedback, we'll be diving deep into Chicago rail issues every Wednesday. Stay tuned as we explore these crucial topics, analyze potential solutions, and discuss how we can make Chicago's transit system work for everyone. Next, let's address a growing issue: regional development versus rail access. One area of rapid growth in the Chicago suburbs is Rockford. The population in this region has been expanding rapidly along with its economic base, but unfortunately, rail service in this area has been stagnant. Despite its growth, Rockford still lacks a direct rail connection to downtown Chicago, something that has been sorely needed for decades. While Metra is moving forward with plans to extend the Union Pacific Northwest Line to Rockford by 2027, the area has been neglected by rail for too long. This is particularly troubling considering that Metra is already planning to connect the booming western suburbs to downtown. Metra's expansion to Rockford will be crucial for linking this region to the city, providing better access to employment opportunities and stimulating further economic growth. This issue isn't just about improving connectivity to one city, it's about unlocking the potential of entire regions. Without proper rail access, suburban areas like Rockford face increased traffic, higher commuting costs, and a lack of regional integration. Currently, Amtrak services don't meet the needs of Rockford residents. They are limited in frequency and slower than what Metra could offer. Metra's new plan is a step in the right direction, but it needs to be fast-tracked. The extension will allow for more efficient travel, connecting Rockford and the surrounding areas to the broader Chicago region. This project is a critical step in integrating the suburbs with the city, and it needs to move forward as quickly as possible. Now, let's address the issue of safety. One of the biggest concerns from riders, and certainly one of the most urgent, is the state of safety on the CTA, particularly on the Red Line south of downtown and the Green Line. Incidents of violence, theft, and even arson have increased in recent years, and that's had a direct impact on ridership. People feel unsafe, and that means fewer people are willing to trust the system with their daily commute. Here's the critical thing to remember: if people feel unsafe, the system isn't working, no matter the budget. There's a direct link between the lack of trust in the system and the declining ridership. For example, as mentioned by some of our viewers, people are afraid to ride the CTA Red Line south of Cermak, where there are reports of stabbings and even instances of people being set on fire. These aren't isolated incidents. They're part of a growing trend that can't be ignored. The CTA can have the best funding in the world, but if riders don't feel secure, they won't return, and that's a critical issue that needs urgent attention. That's why this discussion isn't just about capital investment, it's about policing and trust. Safety needs to be prioritized, not just modernized stations and new trains. Chicago is at a crossroads. The funding is there, but now it's time to focus on what really needs to change. Capital investment is a necessary condition. It's a good thing we have the funding. There's no denying that. But it's not enough. To truly revitalize the system, we need to address the systemic planning issues, make vital connections, and restore safety and trust. These things go hand in hand with the investments being made in the infrastructure. At this moment, Chicago has the opportunity to fix its long-term transit issues or simply repeat the same mistakes of the past. The decision about how we move forward is pivotal. So, what does this mean for Chicago? While the funding increases are essential and will make a big impact, we must recognize that Chicago is at a pivotal moment. This is a crossroads where we can either address the deep-rooted issues with planning, connectivity, and safety, or we can continue to push forward with a Band-Aid approach that fails to solve the long-term problems. To truly revitalize Chicago's transit system, we need a holistic approach. It's not just about the money. It's about making sure that money is spent in a way that addresses the real issues. Planning, connectivity, and safety must be at the heart of the revival of Chicago's transit system. If you live in Chicago or care about how big city rail actually works, this next series is for you. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on our deep dives into the future of Chicago's transit system. Let's keep the conversation going and figure out how to build a rail system that works for everyone.